All right, well, welcome everybody, and thanks for joining us. We did take the decision a few weeks ago that given the constraints with the fourth wave, that the best thing to do was to move forward virtually. Clearly, we hope in the spring to be able to get back in person, but obviously we want to make sure that the safety and health of everybody is paramount, and that we're not putting more implications on our health system. So welcome, and we've created a bit of a shorter agenda given that we're virtual and everybody is glued to their screens constantly, it seems. But we think that there's a number of items that are very relevant, number of issues a lot of us have been faced with, and obviously, you know, certainly one that seems to be rather polarizing, which is the COVID piece, which we'll get to later on. I'd like to welcome my fellow board directors from Edmonton Construction Association. I think I saw Jen Hancock's here, Jamie Singh, Trevor Massel, and obviously our board chair, Doug Hanson, who will talk to us shortly. Also like to welcome, I think, Ken Gibson from ACA and Ron Glenn from ARCA. So welcome to you as well. And thanks again for joining. And we have a whole load of owners and consultants and GCs here. So hopefully we'll have a rich conversation. Also, we've got a number of guests today, and we're very grateful to be able to hear from the new Deputy Minister of Alberta Infrastructure, Mary Person, and her team, as well as End Poverty Edmonton, who are going to give us a bit of a high-level discussion over social procurement, which might be one area we want to consider following up on in due course. And I'd like to sort of hear some comments on items you'd like to discuss at our spring meeting, so that we have sufficient time to prepare and bring back an engaging agenda for our next meeting. But with that, let's get into it. And I'd like to welcome Doug Hanson and ask Doug to open up.
Sure. Thank you so much, Andrew. And let me start off, first of all, by saying a big thank you for all of you for attending and participating in what we feel is a really important initiative here with our Owners Forum. It's critical to us, and we're committed to stand behind it and support this group as we move forward together. We've recently had a board retreat held in September of this year that we dug in and took a close look at renewing our focus on our core services, including membership engagement, the hub of construction that all of us form part of, and ensuring that we're engaging with our stakeholders throughout the value chain and tackling the challenges faced in construction, not to the least of which is the changes with respect to the pandemic that we're going to talk about later on in today's session. So we took a deep look into education at all levels to how that supports our membership, and hopefully with the keen interest on supporting our industry's need and continued need for skilled labor. Finally, we continue to have a strong focus on BuildWorks, which is steadily moving from a tender focused site to a full construction information portal, providing our members and partners with information on projects from inception through to completion. So expanding the time horizons on both sides of these project opportunities is critical for us to provide to our members. The results of the municipal election are now in. We're encouraged by the results. Gosh, lots of new faces, and we're excited to look forward to working with the new group, including Mayor-elect Mr. Sohi. So some returning members to council and many new members. So it's exciting times in the city of Edmonton right now, from a city council point of view, and we look forward to engagement and collaboration with that whole group. The ECA right now is in a time of renewal. We currently have nominations out for several spots. In fact, I think the number is 7 board positions that will become available on our board. And that election is being held in November. We also look forward to welcoming a new president to our organization. We're currently in the interview stages of that process and hope to have some exciting news in the coming weeks with respect to a new outward-facing leader for our organization. All of these efforts will continue to ensure that we're here to support our nearly 1,100 members in and around the Edmonton and Capital Region, offering them, the types of programs and services that are important to them as an organization, and also offering opportunities for collaboration between our membership and the group of folks that are here at this meeting today. So thank you again, Andrew, for your kind introduction. And thank you for all of you that are on our meeting today. And I very much look forward to conversations yet to follow.
Doug, thanks very much, and also appreciate your leadership of the association and your willingness to stay as board chair for the 2022 year. So look forward to many more interactions with you. Okay, so thanks, Doug. So now let's move on, and very pleased to welcome Mary Person, the new Deputy Minister of Alberta Infrastructure. I've known Mary for a while. I know she has a couple of her team with her. So welcome, Mary, and over to you.
I'm just looking to see if she's here yet, Andrew. I know Gaston has joined us. Perhaps
I do see her iPhone, I believe.
Yeah.
Is she muted still? Yeah. Is Vince with us?
I do see Gaston. I don't know if you would like to start things off.
Yeah, no, I think Mary is on. I think she's muted. I can see that her phone, like Andrew said. But anyway, no, we're very excited to participate in this forum. Obviously, I'm new to infrastructure myself. Looking over the agenda, there's a lot of exciting items to cover, and we'd like to support in any way we can. So I'm not sure what Mary had prepared, so I'll keep it short. Over to you guys.
Okay, if Mary comes online, we'll cut across to her, but we're obviously having some problems there. All right, well, let's move on, and we can come back to Mary in due course. So I'm pleased to welcome End Poverty Edmonton to lead an update on social procurement. So over to you. And thanks again for joining us.
So yeah, my name is Susanna Cameron. I'm with End Poverty Edmonton, and I'll be co-presenting with my colleague Brooks Hanowich, who's waving right now. We have a slide PowerPoint that we'll share.
Yeah, I'll just pull it up here. 1 second.
Thanks, Matt, for inviting us. We've met some of you before, but it's a great opportunity to meet all of you and talk about social procurement. So End Poverty Edmonton.
Oh, just wait, Susanna. Can everybody see the screen? Can you see the slides? Thumbs up. Awesome. Great. Thanks. Sorry. Go ahead.
We're an initiative based in the city of Edmonton with a long-term vision to end poverty in a generation. And we're doing this to make sure every Edmontonian can thrive and our economy works for everyone. We're coming to you because we're a different type of initiative or strategy than you may be familiar with when you think of most nonprofits. You may be used to being asked for charitable donations for programs. You may think of nonprofits that have a particular expertise like housing or health, and they're working with a target group like somebody with a disability or with an Indigenous population, and there's a very specific sort of mandate and outcomes that they're serving. Brooks and I feel fortunate to work for End Poverty Edmonton because we're able to step outside of those usual norms of sort of programs and services and work at the systems level and kind of go up 800 feet and look at the overall system and where we can make changes or do things that will help us end poverty. So our role at End Poverty is to act as advisors, conveners, coordinators, or brokers between people. So that's why we're here today to get those of you we haven't talked to already involved and have a conversation about social procurement. So Brooks and I specifically work in what we call livable income, and Poverty Edmonton itself has 6 game changers. So eliminating racism, affordable housing, accessible and affordable transit, quality and affordable childcare, and access to mental health services and addiction supports. And then we're doing livable income. All those game changers interact and they're all important to one another, but we're specifically focusing in this area. Our goal is to make sure all Edmontonians have an income, whether it's through employment, self-employment, or benefits when required, that allows them to take care of their needs and fully participate in the community. And we're doing this by focusing not so much on poverty, but actually on the flip side, which is economic opportunities, and particularly right now coming out of this COVID pandemic, economic recovery. So raising the standard of living or income opportunities. And we are focusing on immigrants, Indigenous, racialized persons, people with disabilities, people with lower skill levels, to create a more resilient city. We are focusing on those demographics because those are the people who are most prevalent in poverty when we look at rates of poverty across the city. So we have a number of tactics, but we're engaging with the construction sector and others around social procurement. I'm sure most of you have heard of it before. It's aiming to achieve the greatest value with purchases that large institutions or companies are making instead of simply the lowest cost. And we started this work with the City of Edmonton. So, you know, speaking of their social procurement policy, they've specifically aligned with End Poverty in Edmonton. So we're looking at how can the city, for example, of Edmonton, buy products and services that will support social enterprises and small and diverse businesses in Edmonton. And we're also looking at, and you may have seen RFPs that are asking, how can you, through your contract, increase access to jobs, provide employment, apprenticeships, and skills training? And we're looking at maximizing community benefits, including community employment benefits through construction and infrastructure projects. So a good example of that, the federal government have a community employment benefit agreement with the West LRT, the West Valley line and the LRT. So they have committed to hiring and purchasing from diverse businesses with targets from particular demographics over the life of that project. So we are excited. As I said, we're not the usual organization looking for funding or charitable donations. We're excited about the opportunity that social procurement brings to those of us working to alleviate poverty, but really across Edmonton, to use social procurement as a tactic or a tool where we're using dollars that the city or other levels of government or other companies or universities or hospitals would be money they'd be spending anyway. And what we think can be achieved with social procurement is a strong, skilled local workforce, an increased focus on jobs for people in Edmonton, but of course this could be scaled at the provincial level too. New and diverse supply chains focused on Edmonton-based businesses, partnerships with Indigenous and newcomer communities, responsible government spending, long-term economic resilience for this region, and regional economic revitalization.
So our tactics are, these are really the on-the-ground work that we're doing. So there are organizations that we partner with that do kind of higher level policy development. So the City of Edmonton worked with an organization called Buy Social Canada to develop their policy. And we really see ourselves as the implementers of social procurement. So when you get to that space where you're like, yes, this is something we want to do, we have some of the processes in place, certainly we can help with that. But you know, once those processes are in place, then we're there on the ground to help make this the most effective and efficient system possible. So we do that in 3 kind of broad ways. So we identify institution and industry purchases conducive to social procurement. So working with companies to look through where they're making purchases and try to identify community, whether it's social enterprises, small diverse businesses, other businesses like that, that can satisfy those requirements, and to, you know, also identify, potential new markets in the community. Maybe there's demand in an area that there isn't a response for right now, but working with community organizations to say, look, there's some potential here. Can you mobilize and can you respond to that? And then with that, we're looking at linking the demand. So when social procurement is either in a tender or a company comes forward and says, yes, we want to do social procurement, linking that demand with the supply, the community response. And so, brokering those connections between those institutions and the community organizations. And we do that in a few different ways. Again, we're working with groups like Business Link on their social, I think it's called Support Alberta. So it's like a local business directory. So working with Business Link to make sure that there's social enterprises and diverse businesses in that directory that you could then look at and find those businesses to purchase from very easily. And we're also working on the workforce development side, and I'll speak more to that in a bit, but with workforce development organizations. So when let's say a bid has hiring Indigenous people in that bid, we're able to have a robust community response and everybody's on the same page on how to do this efficiently and effectively. And then with that is removing the barriers to a robust social procurement response. So within that, like we know, and frankly, a lot of you are probably doing this already, but I suspect there's been rubs at points between, what your goals are and what you want to achieve and what the community response is. So looking at both sides of the equation and really trying to understand where are those barriers and then how can we collectively remove them. So a real, I think, tactical example of this is the work that we're doing in workforce development with a number of construction companies and with, talking to the ECA about social procurement as well. So within Edmonton, there's a fairly substantial group of workforce development organizations. There's about 30 of them that work with all different types of populations that Susanna mentioned. So Indigenous people, newcomers, people who live with disabilities, people in poverty. Some of them you probably know. So Women Building Futures is a good example. So we're working with those organizations to figure out how to coordinate and collaborate their work to better respond to opportunities that we're seeing in the market. And so we're working together as a group of approximately 15 organizations right now to look at how do we create inclusive work environments, how do we develop more efficient employment connections. So when there is demand, let's say a company comes forward and says, look, we're going to have a whole bunch of skilled labor positions coming forward, figuring out from the community side who's in the best position to respond to that, who has trained people, who has people that are interested in those jobs, and then making that connection and exploring policy options and knowledge mobilization between those organizations. So them being able to share best practices, things that might have worked in the past with each other and apply that to kind of current opportunities. Within that, and you can see from the model, there's also training and education in there. So we know that NAIT, Norquest, some of the universities have programs and training embedded in their work already. So we're making sure that training is connected to the job opportunities that we're seeing now and ones that are coming in the future. And then the piece that I think is often missed in this equation is industry and business. And so the real difference here is that we're bringing into the model the voices of, frankly, you, people in the room here, to really talk about what their needs and demands are, what kind of struggles they're facing currently, and trying to connect that into a broader conversation where we can then look at, if this is working, why is it working, and how can we scale that? And if it's not working, how can we remove those barriers? And there's a huge opportunity here to tap into new labor pools. We know from the Indigenous community, it's a largely growing community. There's a lot of people that are either currently underemployed or looking for work. Same with the newcomer community. Like these are quite substantial labor pools, and we think that they're, creating a more efficient connection is going to really crack those open. And the more information we have on the table, the more we understand, both from the workforce development side and the industry side and the training side, what the needs are and how can we align those pieces, the more effective we're going to be in tapping into those labor markets. And then also building a local and resilient workforces, which is, I think, becoming more and more essential now. And we've talked to, and frankly, some people on this call, I've recognized your faces and your names. we've talked to a number of people. We've heard that, there's a lot of interest from industry to develop a local trained workforce. And this won't be a surprise to any of you, but the demand we're hearing has come from, one, an increase in social procurement from the municipal and federal government. So a number of companies have contacted us and said, look, we're putting in this bid. We know that they have a requirement to hire, a percentage of Indigenous people or newcomers. How do we do that effectively? And instead of just taking a scatter shot out into the community and trying to figure out who's who in the zoo, that we can provide maybe a one-stop shop in a way, or at least some navigation to those communities. We're also seeing COVID restrictions in the mobilization of labor, something that won't surprise you, but just I think it behooves us to really look at where is the strength in the local labor market and how can we build that strength up, particularly when people can't move from other provinces or there isn't access to temporary foreign workforces. Another thing that again won't surprise you, aging workforces. So a number of the trades that we've talked to, they're recognizing that their workforce is getting older, and there is kind of a concern over the next 5 to 10 years that they're just not having that new pipeline of people. And we know from the community side that there's a lot of people that are frankly really, really interested in trades, and particularly in construction jobs. So how do we get those people kind of at the front end of their career to fill the labor pool or the labor force when the people retire? And then a younger workforce demanding social responsibility. So that mid-management and people moving into the C-suite saying, asking of their company, what are we doing here? And again, not only does something like social procurement help you to fill those labor pools, but it also gives you a stronger connection to community. Potentially, if you're doing a project in a local community, you have a stronger connection to those people, and you can demonstrate how you're giving back. So the work that we're doing, as I mentioned, we're really on the ground in the implementation side. And when someone comes to us, we're talking with them about how can we mobilize community and industry response to create effective and efficient systems here. So we're helping companies to tap into local diverse businesses and to respond to bidding opportunities as they come up, be it from a federal government, municipal government, provincial government. Really helping them to develop those connections. We broker relationships with a strong network of labor, exactly what I just talked about, right? These 30 organizations that are providing support, who are you best to connect with? What can they provide of you? How do you tap into those communities, those labor pools? And again, a one-stop connection to multiple service organizations, because it can be confusing, right? So getting clarity in that system. And then the final piece that we're just starting to explore, we haven't gone too far down this, but is looking at target setting and reporting. And so working with companies and governments and institutions on, okay, so we're doing social procurement. What does it mean? What impact are we having in the community? How do we know it's working? Where is it working? And how can we scale those pieces? So really trying to get all those pieces in. And I'll say it again, like this idea of, the efficiency and effectiveness of this, I think is at hand. It's just a matter of all of us kind of coming together and putting our cards on the table and saying, okay, this is what we can do and what we want to do. And where's the community response there? And frankly, again, I'll say, I know a lot of you are already doing this, so it's also enhancing what you're already doing. So that is it. I think we're just under 15 minutes. So tried to nail it. But if you have any questions, we can either, I don't know if we can ask them now, or our emails are on there. Feel free to connect with us, and we'd be happy to answer any questions, connect you in with others that are doing this work, or as I mentioned, somebody like BiSocial Canada that's doing the work on a policy and process level. So thanks very much. Susanna, did I miss anything? I was speeding up at the end. I could feel myself going.
So we do have a bit of time. So if there's anyone has any burning questions, happy to take the time to ask them. Is there anything out there? If not, oops. If not, Susanna and Brooks, thank you very much indeed for your time. Really appreciated that. If we could get a copy of that, we'll circulate it with after the meeting so that everyone has your contacts. And it's definitely a topic I think has got more legs and we need to explore it. So very much appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks very much for having us. It was great.
Okay. Well, that's excellent. I've been trying to keep up to date on who's joined us. So I also want to welcome Ken Kazakowicz from CEA. And I also see that we have Ray Bassett, chair of the Canadian Construction Association, and Mary Van Buren, the president. So welcome to you. And also Trevor Doucette, former board chair of ECA, who's now on CCA's board. So thank you again all for joining us. So with that, let's move on to what we initially talked about having was material pricing and accessibility, but I think it's widened more lately, and I think there were announcements today from Government of Canada over which benefits are staying open, certainly to include labour issues. So Jen, do you mind throwing up the Menti? We thought we'd pose a few questions and see if that will stimulate any discussion. So we've got a little bit of time for this. So you can see at the top the Menti code. So if you go to the Menti website and enter the code, we'll give it a couple of minutes while people get in there, and then we're going to ask you a few questions, and then from that, let's see whether that spurs any discussion.
I also just threw the link in the chat for people, if that makes it easier. I think that takes you right to this. We'll just see as people come online here. But the code is right at the top, so 66619316, or you can use the link in the chat. And Andrew, do you want me to queue up the first question here?
Yep, please, let's go.
Sure. So just a reminder to people too that Menti, not that any of this is, but it's anonymous. So answer as best you can. We don't, the ECA board, we're interested in the answers for this to help us kind of plan priorities, discussions, maybe provide a bit more of a link between all of our partners. So we appreciate any of the info you give us. So it looks like we have about 30 people online. If you do have any problems getting on, just send me a note in the chat. We can, we'll just wait a couple more seconds here to see people's responses. We have about 50 people on the call. You can do this on either your phone or your computer in your browser tab. Either way works.
So Jen, just to clarify, are you experiencing project delays specifically to material pricing and accessibility?
Just in general. So this one is more of a general, thanks for that question, Jesse. Just a general question. Are you experiencing project delays? We're just thinking, we just want to kind of know general schedule.
Yeah, we're going to deep dive into some of those sub pieces in subsequent questions. All right. Should we go on to the second one?
So what I'll do here is I'm going to show the results. We can look at these results right now, just as we're going. And I see, Aaron, I will put the code in the chat here in just a second, once I'm going to pop these results out. So we'll see what people are saying here. So pretty strong response here. Oh, thanks, Andrew. That's great. So the code's in the chat for anyone else. You can still answer this question if you're logging on, and you can continue to answer them as we go. Okay, so pretty strong results there. We can move to the next question here. Again, when you log on, you can still go on to that. So next question, are you experiencing cost overruns or escalation on your projects? And just note too, we can also share the results of these with everybody when we're done. All right, so looks like we have over 30 responses. So let's And again, people can continue to vote on this after. So let's see what the results are. Okay, similar. So pretty overwhelmingly, people are experiencing cost overruns and escalation on projects right now. So let's go to the next question. Are labor shortages becoming an issue on your projects? Okay, got a good number of responses. Let's see what we got. Interesting. Okay, so that's seems like it's less, or it's a less obvious issue if it is an issue. Still coming out fairly strong though that that's a problem. Okay, next one. If you are experiencing project delays generally, kind of back to that first question we asked, do you think the primary cause is labor shortage, supply chain issues, COVID complications, or sort of a weird mix of all of the above there, or something other than that? So we're interested to see what people say here.
This is one ultimately we may want to drill into because it may be different for different elements that are present today. So, but it'll be interesting to see what we get here. And I should have said at the start, Matt also shared an article from July that was of interest, and I think things have shifted a bit on, certainly on lumber, and then a paper rather detailed, but there were some interesting charts in there on the optimizing project schedules.
Right, we got over 30 responses here. So let's see what we got. Interesting. I would be interested too in those who answered other. If you would, I'd be curious, you can throw in the chat maybe if you have some thoughts on what else might be causing project delays as a primary cause. And then we're kind of curious about, since there's some clear issues cropping up, how are you addressing all the above? So this question is like an open-ended question where you can type an answer in and we'll start to see the answers scroll on the screen. So we would love to hear how some of you are starting to address these questions. So we'll give a few moments here and people can give us some hints how they're tackling this. And again, if anyone would like to jump on who hasn't been able to get on, let me know and I can help you, or you can also put it in the chat like Jesse did.
It's good, lots of comments coming in here.
Again, just a reminder too, if you're not on the Menti, you can also put a comment in the chat for everybody as well.
Interesting one there. We can get into discussion in the COVID item.
Definitely seen a number of redesign around certain material items.
Yeah.
So Andrew, do we want to open up for kind of maybe discussion now? Do you want me to leave this on the screen still for a bit?
Please. Yeah, I think if we can. So yeah, I mean, given some of those results, so obviously we're predominantly seeing delays in schedule or project delays. There seem to be definitely a predominance to cost overruns, labor issues, and then some of the pieces there that where people are, how people are reacting and trying to adapt to this. Happy to open it up now just for any thoughts. Any concerns, anyone looking for help in any of this? So be good to get a bit of a discussion going. I mean, I can say that the Dewan Pavilion that is actually my picture. We had to take that down. That RFP, it closed. We were so over budget, and we went back to the drawing board, looked at some of the material finishers working with extensive pre-con support, and then did a redesign actually the week that we were going to launch the second RFP because of the roof truss design that suddenly had escalated to 10 months. But as you can see, now we're coming out of the ground. So that's how we've managed to mitigate that. But yeah, definitely we're having to work very closely with our consultants and GCs to manage day-to-day issues. From furniture availability, the fires in BC caused train delays. So there's lots going on. Anybody want to jump in there?
The unintended consequence of, first of all, supply chain issue challenges is creating an incredible, in my opinion, unprecedented level of collaboration with the project team. And it's forcing us to get together as a complete team to talk about these challenges much earlier, and potentially, 5 years ago, we wouldn't have had conversations like this. So I feel like there's some benefits to us, not only from the point of view of getting our hands on the materials and equipment in a timely fashion, but it's just changed the concept of building in more of a collaborative fashion. So that's been a positive unintended consequence of this is just the increased conversations that we're having at the table with many, many more people. So that's the good news to this.
Yeah, and I think that's great, Doug, because if you go back to the work we were doing just as COVID hit on risk and collaboration, that's where we were looking to try and move things, and it's almost being forced upon us, which is, as you say, is a very positive thing to get through these times. And we don't want to lose that. I think that's the other thing. We want to look back and work out the best practices that we've achieved through this, and then try and maintain those going forward. I know there's also been some discussion over the past 2 or 3 months about the time an RFP is out on the market as well. And I don't think there's general agreement amongst a lot of the GCs over what that timeline should be it 15 days, 30 days, whatever. Yeah, so I think there's a lot of issues out there. Yeah, thanks, Jesse, for your comments in the chat. I don't know if anyone's got any IPD or P3 projects ongoing and how you're seeing that, given there's obviously a risk and reward pool. I don't know if anyone's got any experience of that at the moment. Chris, are your team still running any IPDs?
We are. Hi, everybody. Thanks, Andrew. We are at the tail end of some of the larger ones. I'd have to go get some information on exactly how it's grappled with, but maybe Jen has some insights generically about how that would be done specific to our project, so I don't have anything in front of me.
Yeah, I could just comment, I guess, in that the team definitely from an IPD standpoint, I think many of our projects that are in process right now are sort of, some of them just finished up, like our one with EPSB just finished up. Many of them have a lot of their materials sort of were, from a construction standpoint, were ordered and well in place, although we are in the middle of one right now in Lloydminster, but in concrete. We're kind of doing all the kind of civil works right now. So but I think just from a team standpoint, I think anyone who's working in a more collaborative contract, you have a little bit more flexibility to discuss those problems, figure out how you might get around them as a team. And then if you need to order materials earlier or switch a material out, I think it's a little bit easier to do in that kind of setting when you can do that. Yeah, Chris, you want to go? Yeah,
I'd just add that you're absolutely correct, Jen. We were having those discussions, hearing about these discussions probably a year and a half ago, right near the beginning of the pandemic, with placeholders on how to address it already contemplated. And in some cases, many cases, we didn't have to do anything about it. But that team approach and the flexibility to go ahead and grapple with that midstream and have contingency or whatever plans set aside was really, really helpful, I thought. So,
yeah.
Well, thanks. I don't know if anyone's here from Alberta Transportation, but Jesse, are you seeing a difference between civil projects versus vertical infrastructure? Are there any challenges more in one than the other?
From a vertical standpoint, we're hearing more from the material, I would say. From a horizontal standpoint, I hear less of that, the material concerns. I think the labor comment previous, it depends on the area you're at or how busy the area is currently in. There's rumblings in both markets. But again, from a material point of view, we're seeing it more in the vertical construction. Back to the contract type, I know there's a lot of IPD push, CM push was previous. I've seen now progressive design build. We have STIP sum. Regardless of the contract type, I don't think that should be dictating the importance of collaboration from all parties. So whether it's an IPD or a STIP sum, there should still be that upfront collaboration. Otherwise, it just causes more issues down the road. Yeah.
Just wondering, from any of our consultants that are here, are you seeing any issues with specialist manpower? I was talking to Derek Chizeki from SNP last week, and certainly on certain engineering areas, they're seeing a problem with staffing. Just wondering if you've got any experiences. We've got Ian from Next, and there are any other?
Andrew, Frank here. We're not seeing any real issues with labor at this point in time. Partly for us is that I guess the overall activity in the marketplace isn't pushing us to pursue more labor. That may come down the road. For us, it's been more about trying to fit the project schedule with the availability of certain materials, and then having to make changes, or I'll call it alterations, in our approach so that materials choices do fit the client schedule. So that's what we're seeing somewhat regularly right now.
Okay, no, thanks for that. And Ben's put an interesting comment in the chat for the sub-trades because of pricing. And obviously we're seeing, I think Canada's seeing its highest level of inflation for decades at the moment, and obviously we're seeing it with fuels, etc. So we'll see where that's going to translate into the economy.
As for one, we've been searching for an architect principal material in Calgary for about 5 months now, and don't seem to be getting too many bites. And in conversation with some other people in the industry, they're seeing a lot of sort of mid-range people over the last little while quitting. I know we've all heard about this great resignation, but it does seem to be the people that are in that sort of 80 to 90,000 K price range are moving for at least $10,000 a year more. So people are snapping them up, whether the work is out there, they're just getting them ready.
Okay. And is that out of province as well, Ian? Because there was a bad rep a couple of years ago with our downturn, and I know there were concerns in the industry that we were going to see an outpouring of specialist resources to other provinces.
Not so much. We are, like I say, when we are recruiting and trying, we are getting a number of applications from people from outside of the country. We're also seeing it, with people that are getting used to the remote working and don't feel they need to be located within the same office as you to do their work. So we are aware of one of our ex-staff members who recently rejoined her firm in Ottawa, and they have no requirement for her to be physically located.
Okay. So that ability for people to have flexible working arrangements is going to, that COVID's really shown up, is going to be probably key. So those that are more traditional are less likely to attract. Yeah. Okay. Anything else? There's a lot of good items there. I think it's definitely something we need to keep an eye on over the coming months. I mean, everyone's hearing supply chains just for Christmas products are likely to be stretched, and buy now to avoid disappointment. I hear winter tires, if you don't get them quickly, they're out, but that could be just a good marketing ploy, who knows? So, if those supply chains are stretched, then I think the West Coast ports of the States have got the largest queues of container ships they've ever seen waiting to discharge. So yeah, definitely some challenges I think we all need to keep an eye on. Matt, Bill Black down at CCA in Calgary, I know we were working with him a couple of months ago over a document just starting to flag some of these issues. Is that still available on a live document?
Yeah, and we had some engagement with some of our leadership with the ECA as well, particularly as prices were increasing drastically in the spring and into summer. So that is available on our website. I can certainly share with this group directly. And I believe, I'll double check with Bill, but he had a bit of a committee which encompassed some of the people on this call to provide ongoing information. Doug was engaged, Trevor, a few others. So I'll make sure that's available and people can take advantage of the document.
Thanks, Matt. I'm just wondering, Ray or Mary, whether you're seeing this at sort of the Canadian level with your members from other provinces, whether there's anything out there that we can learn from.
Yeah, thank you for the question. Yeah, absolutely. It's a coast to coast problem. And one of the important messages we've been bringing to the federal government is the need for accommodation and flexibility. So we know that contracts are, of course, in progress, but if you can't get the materials, you can't get the labor. I know you're going to be talking about COVID later on the agenda. All of these things require flexibility. And to date, the federal government has been quite a good partner on that. And we hope that leadership also is adopted, and flexibility among the provincial and regional owners as well. I don't know, Ray, if you wanted to add anything.
Yeah, I just really wanted to pick up on a note that Doug Hanson put in the chat, but around the importance now more than ever of sharing the risks around this. And I think the approach with the government of Canada is to be sure that they recognize that even though they only control a very small portion of construction dollars across the country, they have an outsized influence on the process. And so that if they can lead by example and be vocal and forward about a fair sharing regime. Somebody mentioned the early involvement and dialogue with the team, and set the standard of behavior for a public owner, that even though they don't control the dollars in Edmonton, right, they can drive behavior and give municipalities and others a bit of a beacon to follow. Right, it's one thing to say we should do this, but the how is difficult. So the government of Canada can model that way a little bit. So that's a bit of the tack that we've been trying to take to make the job easier locally.
No, thank you both for that. That's very useful. And Ian posted, and the one I didn't touch on, and Ian's posted in the chat about the chip shortage. I mean, that's affecting everything. And my understanding, last I saw, that could run for year to 18 months. So that's going to be an impact throughout. And Erin's also posted in the chat the link to the Calgary Construction Association document that Matt was talking about. So thanks, Erin. Good. Anything else we want to talk about on this one? I think it's definitely something that ECA board have talked about at length. I think we touched on it at our retreat, and certainly one that, as Jen said, we'll keep live and take some of this information back for further discussions, certainly as we're discussing risk to our sector.
Yeah, Ulf here from Qualico. One item just commenting from an owner's perspective is it on occasion is quite difficult for us to absorb the risk, especially on our retail commercial projects, where there's been commitments made to tenants in the pre-leasing, and now the owner is in the position where the revenue side is capped, but the construction cost side is still open. So that is one consideration where we're struggling and trying to find creative ways of finding a solution to that. But there is effectively a disconnect there between what we as owners can actually A, absorb, and B, transfer on to our clients, which is the tenants running their businesses.
No, thanks, Ulf. That's a really, really good point. And I know that, you know, for some of the public owners, our challenges can be, you know, the amount that we've been given in a capital budget from, you know, province or the federal government, or whether it be, you know, a philanthropic project and there is no more money. So how do we deliver? And the one, we've gone through a number of iterations from the I'd say the wants to the actual what can we deliver that's still feasible to operate, and that challenges us, particularly with some of our bureaucratic fiscal approval processes. That does delay things, hence tenders staying open longer than I think everybody would like. And I think we just got to be as flexible as possible with each other to try and achieve the outcomes. All right, and anything else on this one? And obviously from the comments from the last question we asked, there was definitely a piece there about COVID and those that are having mandatory vaccine policy. So I think that moves nicely into our next one, which I'm grateful that Jen, who is our technology expert and behind all our Menti, it's certainly not me, is going to lead us into a bit of a discussion and another couple of opportunities for some discussion on COVID. So Jen, thanks again for being willing to do that.
No problem. All right. So yeah, we can move into this next section on COVID. What we wanted to do was just kind of do a bit of an update onto some of the information we've seen come across from an owners and GC standpoint, and then we'll do some breakout rooms here in a moment. So this, you know, there's been over the last couple of months some changes in especially with around vaccine requirements and mandates within companies. So just interestingly, you can see on the left, there's a list of general contractors. I think I'm pretty sure PCL and Elliston led this on the contractor side with an announcement around vaccine requirements for their staffing. And then a number of other general contractors followed suit shortly thereafter. And then on the owner side, there was some of the first ones I saw. Alberta Health Services, Cadillac Fairview was one of the more kind of private owners we saw, where they said, where you have to be vaccinated in order to work on these project sites. So that's sort of an interesting shift that's happened. We might be missing some, so I'd actually be curious if any of you work for owners groups that have mandates in place that we don't have on here. Be really interested. You can throw those in the chat, so we can add it to our list of what we've been putting out. This is one of the mandates, I guess, that's been really had a pretty significant change on industry. And then just, beginning of the month, October 1st, there was a town hall held with Premier and a few of the ministers, Minister Copping and Minister Schweitzer, and I can't remember if Minister Panda was on as well. Oh, I don't know why that's switching quickly. Thanks, Christopher. Qualico. Oh, good. I see some of the stuff going in chat. That's great. Qualico, City of Spruce Grove, Defense Construction Canada. Great. We will add that to our list. Thank you for continuing to fill that in. And so the Premier talked to the industry and just sort of gave an update and sort of wanted to have the industry work with them in terms of vaccine mandates, in particular messaging from, and I think Ken's on, and I don't know if he wants to update it all, but messaging was that, the design and construction industry has done a pretty good job with owner groups to make sure that the sites have been safe, and we've been able to maintain construction throughout. And So anyways, this was a letter sent to just as an update there. So what we wanted to do today, just because we know that this is sort of a really quickly changing landscape, we want to do breakout rooms. So what we'll do is in a few moments, we're going to send you to breakout rooms. We would like for everyone to, throw their cameras on, and there'll be smaller rooms depends on, but probably around 7 or so people in each room. And I'm going to throw a set of questions in the chat, but right here, I'll just show you what they are for now. So we would like just for you to discuss. So this is like around organizations. This isn't around people's like personal preferences or thoughts or whatever. It's just, where's your organization now on vaccine mandates for your staffing? How has this impacted construction on any of your projects? If it has, you can discuss outside of this if you need. And then how long do you see this staying in place for? So we'd like people to discuss kind of these 3 questions. I'm going to put these in the chat so that when you go into your breakout rooms, you have access to them. It would be great if people, once they get into their chats, maybe someone takes a few notes, we'll do a bit of a check back in. And then I do have Menti to sort of wrap up with some of this so we can capture a little bit more. And then again, it'll be easy for us to pump out some of that data to everyone who's on the call today. So these are the 3 questions. We're going to give you probably 10 or 15 minutes, I guess, in your breakout rooms or so, around 10 minutes. And I'll send you a note when we're about ready to call you back, and just maybe do a quick, so cameras on, do maybe a quick introduction if you don't know everyone in your room. And then just, talk through these around from your organization standpoint and or what you're seeing sort of out there. This again is meant to give us some good information about where we see industry, not only now, but where it's moving forward. So Matt, you guys can throw us into breakout rooms now, and we'll see you guys all back here in 10 or 15 minutes. All right, so everybody's favorite topic for the last year and a half. I would be interested just in anyone have anything interesting that came out of their conversations around impacts to construction, how long you see it staying in place. Anyone want to share?
I think it was pretty consistent across our groups. There was a pretty good uptake from for like, again, double vaccination or negative tests for direct staff. It's just a matter of like when it goes out into subcontracts and things like that, as you go broader reach, tough to control it, to track it, and to mandate it, because there's just people in and out all the time, and it becomes a control point concern. So
thanks, Paul. Anyone else have anything different? Todd?
Yeah, I was just gonna, I was also in Paul's group. One of the things that we didn't quite get finished, I had a couple people couldn't talk, but Naomi had some interesting lessons that they're learning from all the work that they're doing up north as it relates to some of this stuff and the impacts. And maybe if she's on here somewhere, maybe she might want to make mention of that.
Hi there. Yes, I was talking just towards the end because of the pandemic and because our region includes the Northwest Territories and Nunavut and some very, very tight restrictions. As you remember, there was isolation requirements, people were not allowed to enter and so on and so forth. We did have to wrestle with a number of things like accelerated cost, or sorry, increased cost, construction delays, coming up with innovative solutions to projects. For example, we had a project where equipment and materials were to be delivered by sea lift to some of these remote locations. And the cost of doing the work in that particular construction season was incredible. So we determined that we would ship the materials and equipment and pay storage costs and delay the actual construction work to the next season in the hope that costs would be less and things would be able to proceed. So, we've had to come up with those kinds of solutions and those kinds of workarounds, obviously to deal with some of the pandemic situations, contracts that have gone forward post-pandemic. Initially, we had to find a way, typically through a cash allowance of some description, to accommodate anticipated and at that point unknown isolation costs that would be incurred by obviously consulting and construction teams. So we've had to go through some of these different kinds of thinking it through specifically for projects in the north. So with that, federally, there has been a bit of a, I want to call it policy or directive around how to potentially handle COVID costs that might be occurring on projects. We haven't seen such dramatic, despite anticipating that the sky would fall, we haven't really seen those kinds of increased costs in projects south of 60. So I found that has been interesting. We've somehow been able to mitigate the costs of COVID south of 60. So that's what we've learned so far. I do believe that, for example, with projects in the north, trying to figure out how to monitor and police, for example, COVID, we have been seeing the implementation of rapid daily testing or rapid testing, certainly for crews and flights that are coming in. That entire crew will be tested. And then when they cycle out, the next crew coming in will have to be rapid tested. Of course, prior to them even landing, they would have been isolating, right? So those are just some of the things that we've been dealing with in some interesting locations and sites over the last almost 2 years. Thanks.
Thanks for sharing, Naomi. That's great. Some really interesting challenges you're dealing with there on top of what the rest of us are, just from a site-specific standpoint. Anyone else want to throw anything out that they chatted about in their groups?
Jen, I guess I could add from our breakout group that there was some discussion around isolated pockets of interruptions in supplies or services, largely, I guess, services to stakeholders or citizens or students or something like that, that certain organizations worry about an interruption. It's not just a delay or a cost. There's actually an interruption to a service that you kind of always have one eye on as you mandate blanket things like this, and it certainly is a concern. But there was an overriding feeling of inevitability as we talked about stuff. I think some industries maybe, or some areas or some owners just need to be a bit strategic in how they approach it, so there's not stakeholders left without a level of service or something like that. So I think there is some, but certainly a collective understanding that, I mean, it is what it is. It's going there, sort of thing, right? If I've captured it correctly, I think.
Yeah. Jason, did you have a comment or no? I just saw you unmute.
Just to add on Chris's point, the question, how long do we see it staying in place? It was interesting. We heard a comment that this is forever. And we don't have that conversation a lot because nobody really knows, but it was interesting to hear that comment come out to say that this will be the way it is forever.
Yeah, that came up in our group as well. I think it's just the new norm. It's going to be a requirement. So I could talk briefly about our experience. So yeah, Elliston and us came out with it. We kind of knew where we are with our salary staff. So as of the end of the month, I'll be 98% of my 200 salary staff. I'll lose 2 because of the issue. They've asked for exemptions that were not approved. So that's where I'll end up the month. So we're in great shape there. And that's been a lot of work between my managers and the company to get people educated. We've now moved past salary onto our hourly workforce. Obviously, we always start with ourselves and then push to the industry. So I can tell you right now with our hourly workforce, we're about 300 in the field. They started at about 30–40% vaccination rates. We've got that up through awareness education and direct facilitation. We've got that up to 85–90% as of today. And we're going to continue to push forward. It's going to be tough, the last 10%, to be blunt. And then, of course, we'll look to continue the same program with our trade contractor partners shortly, because to us, it's inevitable. We have many clients, and our mix of work, more than our fair share of our clients, are mandating it. So it's a requirement anyhow. And so to this date, we've had to move some people around, but that's going to become harder and harder to do. And we have a large northern project as well, which requires flights. So once you're getting on an airplane, there's not much choice. So we have some locals on the site that, of course, don't have to abide by it, but anybody traveling has to. So it takes time and effort, but you have to have that vision and you work towards it, and it takes time. But we're even getting the hourly workforce there, at least our own. So it shows you can make that movement with the extra effort.
Thanks, Jason, for that. I just want to comment that Chandos also has gone with hourly workforce as well, and that has been, but we've had some challenges on both sides. But yes, thanks for speaking up about that. Anyone else?
Is there any particular method or group of methods that have allowed that? Is it education? Is it a mix of certain things, particularly related to the field staff?
The field staff's been lots of discussions and the realization, if you want to work, work with us, I guess, because of our clients, but we've also facilitated. So we've gone so far as to arrange pharmacists and done 2 rounds of traveling sites booked in advance, and they come out and we administer on sites, period. So it just shows, unfortunately, there's a large batch that are just, if it's not convenient, they don't do it. So we make it convenient.
Thanks, Jason.
Yeah, we also, we didn't quite do that, Jason, but there's a giving people the time to be able to know what's coming. We also we had someone from the UVA, one of the researchers, come in and talk about vaccines so that people could ask questions and have a more in-depth ability to talk through that. Yeah, I think we just spoke about the importance to our clients and to keeping safe job work sites. And so there was just a lot of communication back and forth, and certainly there will be people who will not agree with that. But I think the more of us that move on board in that direction, then I think it does start to really move the industry in that space.
Yeah, Jen, and I just, we're looking long term, so we're just changing our hiring policy so that any new employees, it becomes a prerequisite of acceptance. And the offers that students are currently receiving for fall 2022, their acceptance is conditional on accepting they have to be fully vaxxed or receive an approved accommodation. So we are thinking this is definitely long term.
Well, I think we'll probably pause just for sake of time. The mentee at the very end, we'll pass through what we do have for details for everybody. And maybe, Andrew, just before I pass back to you, one thing I wanted to mention to everyone on the call, just from just an announcement, I guess, standpoint, I'm on the board of the Integrated Project Delivery Alliance as well. And there are a few people on this call who would be members of that. It's coming, we have a big virtual conference coming up on November 23rd and 24th. Anyone who's a member can attend for free. Otherwise, it's $95. And it's not just, we've got speaker Rex Miller from the US. He actually co-authored a book with Bill Black a number of years ago. He's going to be speaking about the future of work. We've got an architect out of the US who thinks about design from a different perspective. He likes to think about it from more of a lean perspective. So it's not just going to be IPD content, it's going to be kind of collaborative project delivery content. I will put in the chat the link to the Eventbrite if anyone's curious. If you're an owner, you basically can sign up to IPDA for free if you'd like. Groups like City of Edmonton are already members, and so you can come to the event for free. And then anyone else, it's $95 for 2 days. And even if you can't attend the whole 2 days, you'll get access to the recordings after. So just a quick plug for that event. I think it's great from a collaborative project delivery standpoint. So I'll put it in the chat if you're interested, and you can reach out to me as well if you have questions.
Jen, thanks for that, and thanks again for pulling that topic together, because we know it's a challenging one, but we're all living, so that's great. We're sort of coming towards the end of our time. We'd love to get some feedback on the session and thoughts on future topics that you'd like to see discussed or presented for information at the next meeting. And I think Matt will put out a little survey within the next day or so, but we do encourage you to give us some feedback to make sure these are worthwhile, and also for ideas for the future, please. Just a few dates that might be of interest. The ECA board has 7 vacancies or up for re-election. That was announced by Doug last week. So the nominations are open now until the 27th of October, and elections will then take place 9th to the 24th of November to populate the board. Builders Connect lunch is confirmed for Thursday this time, the 3rd of February. I think Caroline and Matt are hoping we'll be able to do it. Excuse me, an in-person lunch. An event which will be good to see again. It will be good to get people back together. So that's another one for your diary. And we're proposing that the next gathering of the Owners Forum will be on April the 21st next year. We'll get those dates out to everybody as a hold in calendars. And again, I think by then we hope to find a location that we can gather in person. So with that, thank you again to Matt for corralling us, Jen for all your input, and to everybody for attending. Very much appreciate the discussion today, always useful and great to get together. So thank you, and have a good rest of your week.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.